They tell us the Bible is clear. Love God, love your neighbor. Pray, forgive. Then you turn a page and something else stares back at you. A storm cloud made of glowing metal rolling across the sky. Creatures with 4 faces and wings covered in eyes. A throne of fire resting on wheels that blaze like gemstones. You close the book and think, whatever this is, it is not for me. So most people never go back to those chapters. We highlight the simple parts and quietly skip the strange ones. Yet those strange passages are not decoration. They are not random dreams. They are not filler between the stories we like. They are the places where the writers pull the curtain back and let us peek into how they believed the universe really works. In this video, we are going to stop skipping. We will walk straight into the Bible at its strangest. We will slow down, stay with the text, and let the details talk. You are about to see how visions, numbers, and rituals that look confusing actually form a hidden framework that ties huge parts of the Bible together. Once you see it, you will never look at those chapters the same way again. The night, the sky turned into a throne room. Imagine this. You grow up in a family of priests. From childhood, you are trained for one job. You memorize prayers. You learn how to slaughter animals correctly. You study blueprints of the temple. Every gate, every basin, every lamp. You are told that one city is the center of the world, Jerusalem. One building is the holiest place on earth, the temple. One room, the inner sanctuary, is where heaven and earth touch. That is the world of Ezekiel. Then everything collapses. Foreign armies invade. The city burns. The temple that defined your entire life is gone. You are marched across the desert as a prisoner and dumped beside a dusty irrigation canal in a place called Babylon. Now picture Ezekiel sitting by that canal. No altar, no incense, no choir, no holy of holies. He is a priest with no temple and a God whose house was just demolished. If there was ever a moment to question everything, this is it. Then it happens. Ezekiel says the heavens opened. He sees a storm cloud racing toward him from the north. Inside the cloud, fire that never burns out, flashes of lightning. And then he sees them. 4 living beings, each one with 4 faces, a human, a lion, an ox, an eagle. In the ancient world, those were the rulers of their realms. Humans, rulers on land. Lions, rulers among wild animals. Oxen, rulers of the field. Eagles, rulers of the sky. These creatures move without turning, as if every side is the front. They have wings that touch, forming a living platform. Beneath them he sees wheels inside wheels packed with eyes. The wheels move wherever the creatures move, alive with awareness. Above the wings, a clear surface like crystal. Above that, a throne. On the throne, a human-like figure blazing with fire from the waist up and down, surrounded by radiant light. For many readers, the reaction is simple. That is weird. Close the book. Move on. But if you slow down, the first secret appears. Ezekiel is seeing a mobile version of the temple throne room. In Jerusalem, God was said to sit above the cherubim over the Ark of the Covenant. Here, in exile, the same God appears enthroned above living cherub-like beings, but now the throne has wheels. The message is sharp and comforting at the same time. The God of Israel is not a local God who lost his home when the temple fell. He is not trapped in the ruins. His presence can roll into Babylon itself, like a royal war chariot. To exiles who thought, maybe Babylon's gods won, this vision answers, no. The true throne has arrived in their capital, and you saw it drive past the canal. Now look at a deeper layer that many modern readers miss. In the ancient Near East, kings surrounded themselves with hybrid guardian figures. Winged bulls, lion bodies with human heads, statues with wide eyes carved to look always awake. You can still see them today in museums. Ezekiel takes all that royal imagery and turns it into something overwhelming. Not one guardian creature, but 4 in perfect symmetry. Not one statue with large eyes, but countless eyes on wheels and bodies. Not a quiet throne, but a storm that crackles with fire and sound whenever it moves. He is doing something brilliant, using the visual language of empire, then blowing it wide open. Every earthly throne is just a cheap copy of this sky chariot. Every emperor who carves lions beside his seat is acting out a miniature version of a reality that belongs only to the God Ezekiel serves. The strange vision is a political manifesto in picture form. It says to crushed exiles, Babylon is not the center. The true court is above this canal, and you have seen it with your own eyes. The scene is not nonsense. It is resistance theology painted in flame, wheels, and eyes. When the temple walls started to breathe, now move from a canal in Babylon to the temple in Jerusalem before it fell. A prophet named Isaiah enters the temple in the year a king dies. Grief hangs in the air. A throne is empty. Power is about to shift. Isaiah walks into the building he knows by heart. He has seen the outer courts. He knows the sound of the choir. He has smelled the incense. Then suddenly the place he thinks he understands becomes something else. He sees the Lord seated on a high throne. The hem of God's robe fills the temple. Not the whole garment, only the edge, yet even that is too much for the room. Above the throne hover seraphim, burning ones, each with 6 wings. With 2 they cover their faces. Even beings made of flame cannot look directly at the glory they serve. With 2 they cover their feet, a symbol of humility and modesty. With 2 they fly, ready to move at a word. They call to one another, "Holy, holy, holy," and the sound rocks the foundations. Smoke fills the building. The solid stone begins to feel like a living lung, drawing in breath, pushing out breath. Most sermons treat this as a personal moment. Isaiah feels unclean. A coal from the altar touches his lips. He is forgiven and sent. That does happen. But notice what else is going on. Isaiah is a professional holy man. He moves in royal circles. He speaks in courts. He has probably walked through these temple corridors 100 times. Yet when the invisible reality behind the rituals is revealed, his first reaction is not, "How honored I am." It is, "Woe is me. I am ruined. I am a man of unclean lips, and I live among people of unclean lips." The vision strips away his status and his comfort. It tells him that proximity to sacred spaces does not equal purity. You can stand in a temple every day and still be unfit to speak for the God who truly sits there. The burning coal that touches his mouth is not a cute symbol. It is a painful, dangerous mercy. It says that speaking on behalf of God requires a mouth that has passed through fire, not just a title on a letterhead. Here is the pattern beginning to appear. Ezekiel, a priest without a temple, sees the throne ride into exile. Isaiah, a prophet in the official temple, sees that same throne erupt inside the building. Different locations, same shock. The God they talk about is not safe, not small, not an accessory to the nation. Every true vision of the throne room exposes human pride, cleanses, and then sends people back into the world with a dangerous assignment. The odd creatures and blinding light are not there to entertain us. They are there to show just how serious it is to claim that you speak for the Holy One. The island, the prisoner, and the College of Visions centuries pass. Empires change names, the Babylonians fall, the Persians rise, then the Greeks, then Rome. Temples are rebuilt and destroyed again. Prophets come and go. Now we meet John, exiled on a rocky island as punishment for following Jesus. He is far from his people, cut off from the gatherings he loves. He has no pulpit, no synagogue, no house church, only waves, wind, and stone. On a day of worship, John says he is caught up in the Spirit. He hears a loud voice behind him and turns. What he sees pulls together centuries of weirdness into one overwhelming collage. He sees someone like a son of man, dressed in a long robe with a gold sash. Hair white like wool, eyes like flames, feet glowing like metal in a furnace. His voice sounds like the ocean itself. Lampstands surround him, echoing the lampstands that burned in the temple. In his hand are stars, images of heavenly messengers that guard the congregations John knows by name. Then the scene shifts. A door stands open in heaven. John is invited to come up. He steps through and the pattern finally snaps into full focus. He sees a throne, lightning, thunder, creatures that look very much like Ezekiel's beings, full of eyes, praising without rest. A sea of glass stretches out like a polished floor. 24 elders sit around the throne, falling to the ground and casting crowns in worship. This is not a brand new fantasy. It is a deliberate remix of earlier visions. Isaiah's temple smoke, Ezekiel's creatures and wheels, psalms that picture God riding on the cloud chariot, stories of heavenly courts where decisions are made about what will happen on earth. Revelation takes all of that and places it inside the reality of a tiny movement of persecuted believers scattered through Roman cities. What is the point? Not just to tell us about future events, though the book does look ahead. The first shock is about the present. From the ground, Rome looks permanent and absolute. It has roads, legions, money, propaganda, and power. From the island, John's little communities look fragile and small. But from the throne room, everything flips. The mighty empire appears as a beast that rises from the sea, roaring for a limited time before judgment. The small congregations appear as lampstands in the very presence of the one whose eyes are like fire. Once again, the strangest visions are the sharpest protest against any kingdom that tries to play God. Ezekiel saw God's chariot roll into enemy territory. Isaiah saw the true throne behind the temple. John sees that same throne above Rome itself. The message across time is consistent. Thrones come and go. The one surrounded by creatures and songs does not move. If you skip the strange parts, you miss the backbone of the entire prophetic tradition. The numbers that refuse to be simple visions are not the only strange thing. The Bible also plays with numbers in ways that can feel almost teasing. 40 days of rain, 40 years in the wilderness, 70 weeks in a prophecy from Daniel, 1,000 years in Revelation, a sealed number of 144,000. Many people either ignore these details or obsess over them. Either they say, "It is all symbolic, who cares?" or they pull out charts and calculators and try to guess specific dates. There is another way to see them. In ancient writings, certain numbers carried layers of meaning. 7 was fullness, completion, the rhythm of creation. 12 pointed to tribes, foundations, structures. 40 often marked times of testing and transition. Think about it. 40 days of flood, the world passing through judgment and emerging new. 40 years of wandering, a generation dying in the desert so a new one can enter the land. 40 days of Jesus in the wilderness, facing temptation before his public work begins. You do not have to turn these into rigid codes. You can see them as signals. When a story uses 40, it whispers, "This is a turning point, a time in the wilderness between what was and what will be." When a vision uses 12 upon 12, as in the 144,000, the point is not to give a head count for heaven. It is to picture the fullness of God's people, drawn from every tribe, completed and sealed. 7 seals, 7 trumpets, 7 bowls in Revelation. Think of waves of judgment and warning, bringing history to a complete reckoning, not random quantities of disasters. The strange numbers are not there to feed anxiety or allow a secret club to feel superior. They are part of a symbolic language that repeats across the Bible, like musical notes that echo the same melody in different keys. Once you recognize that melody, you begin to notice how carefully the writers use their numbers. You start to see structure, where before you saw only confusion, beasts, horns, and the politics of the unseen. Now we step into some of the hardest territory. Beasts rising from seas, horns speaking arrogant words, a small horn uprooting 3 others, a dragon that sweeps stars from the sky. It can feel like a fantasy novel written by someone with a fever, but again, if you look at the world behind the text, something becomes clear. In books like Daniel and Revelation, beasts are how the Bible talks about empires when the curtain is pulled back. From the ground, a kingdom looks organized and impressive. It has culture, art, leaders in fine clothes, parades, and monuments. From heaven's courtroom, the same kingdom looks like a ravenous animal driven by appetite and violence. Lions with wings, bears with ribs in their mouths, leopards with many heads. A final creature so brutal that Daniel can only call it terrifying. These images are not there so that we can glue them onto modern headlines like stickers. They are there to say, whenever a human power treats people as things, whenever it tramples the weak, it is acting like a beast, no matter what anthem it sings. The horn that speaks arrogant words is not only one particular politician, it is a pattern that keeps appearing. Leaders who use their voice to challenge heaven, to boast, to crush. The visions promise that beasts have a limit. They rise, they roar, they fall. Thrones are moved, books are opened. Judgment comes from the Ancient of Days, a figure older than every empire, seated in light. This is why persecuted communities loved these strange chapters. They saw in them a promise that the creatures devouring the world would not reign forever. For us, the challenge is different, but just as serious. These texts ask us, which powers in your own world look civilized, but behave like beasts when no one is watching? Where are you tempted to side with the beast because it feels safer than standing with the slain lamb? Suddenly, the dragon and the horns are not distant symbols. They are mirrors, rituals that look bizarre but whisper about justice. Not all strange passages are visions or numbers. Some are rituals that feel completely foreign. A goat chosen by Lot, hands placed on its head, sins spoken over it, then driven into the wilderness. The ashes of a red cow mixed with water to purify people who touched death. Water scooped from the temple floor, mixed with dust, used in a jealousy test. At first glance, these practices feel like magic. To many modern readers, they are embarrassing. But remember how ancient life worked. There were no laboratories, no court cameras, no psychological therapy. Rituals were visible symbols that tried to hold together a community struggling with guilt, fear, and conflict. The scapegoat, for example, does two things at once. It admits that the community's sins are real and heavy, not just private feelings. Words are spoken. Responsibility is named. Then the goat carries that burden away from the camp into the empty places. It is a picture of removal, of separation between guilt and people. Later, writers will point back to this and say, this is what it looks like when God takes sin and moves it away from us as far as east from west. The ritual with the red heifer looks strange, but it centers on a simple truth. Death contaminates. It breaks things. It leaves a mark on everyone who touches it. Purification rituals were a way of saying, we take the disturbance of death seriously. We will not pretend it is nothing. Again and again, the odd ceremonies insist that holiness, justice, and mercy must be embodied. You do not just think them, you act them out. You feel them in your hands. When you slow down and ask why each ritual exists, you often find a concern that still matters. The protection of the vulnerable, the danger of false accusation, the burden of unconfessed guilt, the longing for a clean start. Behind the strangeness is a God who cares how communities live, not just how individuals believe. How to walk through the weird parts without getting lost. So how do you actually read these passages without either running away or getting trapped in speculation? 3 simple habits can change everything. First, always ask, where have I seen this before? When a vision shows a throne, wings, and eyes, remember Ezekiel, Isaiah, Revelation. When a number appears, remember the patterns of 7, 12, 40. When a beast rises from the sea, remember Daniel and the way empires are pictured as animals. The Bible often explains its own imagery by echoing earlier scenes. The more you notice those echoes, the less random the weirdness feels. Second, ask, what would this have meant to the first hearers? Ezekiel's vision to exiles desperate for hope. Isaiah's temple scene to a court full of pride. John's collage of images to small communities under Roman pressure. These texts spoke into specific crises. They named empires, idols, and injustices that were pressing on real people. When you see that, you can then ask, what has the same shape in my world? Where are similar patterns at work? Third, remember that these passages are not just information. They are invitations to worship and courage. Every throne room vision ends with human beings on their faces. Every beast vision ends with a call to endure, to resist, to stay faithful. If your reading of the strange parts only fills notebooks and arguments, but never moves your heart toward awe and your life toward faithfulness, you are missing the point. The creatures with many eyes, the wheels within wheels, the numbers, the rituals, all point in one direction. History is not spinning randomly. There is a throne at the center. There is a story behind the chaos, and the God who sits at the center keeps calling people who feel small and unworthy to stand, to speak, to live differently. We began with scenes most people never read in church, wheels covered in eyes, burning creatures, beasts and numbers and rituals that make us uncomfortable. And yet, behind all that strangeness, we found a consistent heartbeat. A God whose presence refuses to be limited to one building or one nation, a throne that outlasts every empire, a series of visions that comfort the oppressed and confront the powerful. The Bible's strangest passages are not mistakes. They are pressure points, places where the veil thins and the writers try to show us more than ordinary language can carry. If this journey has made you curious, do not close your Bible at the weird parts anymore. Slow down. Ask questions. Look for patterns. Because once you start to see how these passages fit, you may realize something unsettling and beautiful. The sections you were taught to ignore might be the very places where the story of God, the story of the world, and your own story finally collide.